When the casting call went out for Heated Rivalry, nobody could have predicted the wild stories we are about to spill. But before we get to the jaw-dropping auditions of Connor Story and Hudson Williams, let's start with someone who was living a completely different life just weeks before landing their role. Robbie Graham was working a base-level sales job in downtown Toronto, grinding through 9-to-5 shifts before he found himself on a hit TV show. The routine was relentless. Graham was juggling audition tapes in the evenings after exhausting workdays, trying to break into an industry that felt impossible to crack. When the audition for Heated Rivalry came through, Robbie didn't even audition for the role he eventually landed. He originally read for Scott Hunter, and here's where it gets hilarious. Robbie had grown out what he describes as a really shitty mustache, and was sporting a bit of a mullet because he thought it would give him that classic hockey bro look. The most absurd part is that the showrunner, Jacob Tierney, saw past the crappy mullet and the terrible mustache and said, "Let's see this guy for Kip instead." So Robbie had to shave and get a proper haircut for his next audition, which was successful and led to more chemistry reads with other actors auditioning for Scott. And that's when Robbie met Francois Arnault, virtually for the first time, not knowing that his life was about to change completely. Within weeks, he'd be leaving that downtown Toronto sales job behind forever, trading cold calls for a role on a show that would explode in popularity. However, not everyone had to go through the same audition process to land their roles. Francois Arnault didn't audition for Heated Rivalry at all. Instead, showrunner Jacob Tierney called him directly with an offer. But here's where it gets interesting. Francois was supposed to be working on another movie that suddenly fell through, which made him available right when Heated Rivalry needed him. Jacob had already been auditioning other actors for the role, but he couldn't get Francois out of his head. Jacob called Francois and said, "Can you read this today?" This was maybe 6 weeks before shooting was supposed to start. Jacob admitted, "I've auditioned people for this, but I keep hearing your voice. I didn't write this for you, but whenever I read it, all I hear is you saying it." So they set up a chemistry read with Robbie Graham, who was already cast as Kip. Francois said that even on the Zoom call, Robbie was incredibly open, available, able to sustain eye contact, and charming in a way that made all the flirty rom-com lines sound natural. Francois mentioned he forgot there was even a script because Robbie made everything sound like it was just coming out of his mouth, and right there on that Zoom call, they were told, "Great, see you next week." Francois went from available actor to cast member in a matter of days, and they barely had time to spend together before shooting began. But the casting surprises don't stop there. Another actor brought something incredibly unique to her audition, making her unforgettable. Cassinia Daniela Karlamova's journey to playing Svetlana began with an audition that didn't even tell her which show she was auditioning for. She received sides for a project labeled simply HR. The character description caught her attention immediately, a strong Russian woman who would be speaking both English and Russian throughout. As a native Russian speaker, Karlamova felt an instant connection to the role. This was the kind of part she'd been waiting for. After her initial audition, there was a delay. Weeks went by with no word. Then in May, the callback came. This is where things got wild. She was asked to perform a lengthy monologue in both English and Russian. The scene was extensive, requiring her to switch between languages seamlessly while maintaining the character's emotional arc. And right in the middle of her callback, the Wi-Fi on the casting director's end crashed and the connection dropped. Karlamova had to wait, staying in character, keeping her energy up, not knowing if they'd even seen her performance. When they reconnected, she had to start again, but she nailed it. The casting team was impressed not just by her bilingual performance, but by how she handled the technical interruption with complete professionalism. Within a week or two of getting the offer, she was already on set filming. But what happened to the two leads is what makes this casting story absolutely legendary. Connor Story was living paycheck to paycheck in Los Angeles, working as a waiter at Laurel Grill in Culver City. The job at the restaurant wasn't going well. In fact, he was barely holding on to it.
So 8 months ago, you're a waiter at a restaurant.
Yep. And during the audition process, even like 2 callbacks in, I was still working there.
Connor had dropped the ball on service, gotten a bad review from a table, and his boss sat him down for a serious conversation. It was a final warning. One more mistake, and he was out. Then the audition for Heated Rivalry came through. Connor read the breakdown, saw it was a show that heavily involved intimacy, and made a bold decision for his self-tape. Without being asked or in the instructions, Connor took off his shirt. He recorded his entire audition shirtless. His reasoning was simple. If they're making a show with this much physical intimacy, the casting team needed to see what the actors actually looked like. He could have come across as unprofessional or been dismissed entirely, but Connor figured if he was going to shoot his shot, he might as well go all in. And it worked. That shirtless self-tape got him into the room for chemistry reads. Interestingly enough, Connor wasn't the only one working a restaurant job during this process. Hudson Williams was also waiting tables, hustling through shifts while pursuing an acting career. When Hudson got the call back for Heated Rivalry, he had no idea his life was about to change most unexpectedly. The showrunner, Jacob Tierney, knew from the beginning that this show would live or die based on the chemistry between Shane and Ilya. They couldn't cast these roles separately and hope it worked out. They needed to find two actors who could work together in the same show with that inexplicable spark that made their connection feel real. Connor read with multiple actors wanting to play Shane. The first two chemistry tests were fine, but something was missing. Then Hudson Williams came on screen for the chemistry read and everything shifted. Jacob Tierney noticed it too and texted Connor directly after the read.
Yeah, even Jacob texted me at that point and was like, "So who do you like?" And I was like, "Hudson, obviously." And then he was like, "Yeah, me too."
But it wasn't just Connor who felt that spark. Hudson had the same reaction. Both actors knew immediately that they'd found their counterpart. But here's where the story gets absolutely wild, because Hudson said something about Connor after that chemistry test that nobody expected. And even now, when asked about it in interviews, there's hesitation before it gets revealed. During one interview, Hudson referenced the comment he made to Jacob after reading with Connor and another possible Ilya, but he couldn't remember the exact wording. He asked Jacob if he remembered. Jacob replied, "I do, but are we going to say it out loud?" Hudson pushed for Jacob to repeat it, and Jacob finally said what Hudson told him after that chemistry test. "The other guy was good, but Connor felt like he was going to pin me down and me." That was the moment and the exact reaction the show needed. It wasn't just about two actors who could deliver lines well together. It was about finding two people whose chemistry was so intense, so real, that it translated through the screen in a way that felt undeniable. Jacob Tierney knew instantly that he'd found Shane and Ilya, saying, "They were essentially cast at the same time. It was very clear to us that we needed to find Shane and Ilya together. This show lives and dies with them, so we needed to make sure that this worked together. There are terrific actors who are in different shows. You need to find the people who are going to be together in the same show," and that's what the two of them had quite instantly. Within weeks, Connor went from being on Final Warning at Laurel Grill to filming intense, intimate scenes as Ilya Rozanov. Hudson went from waiting tables to playing Shane Hollander in a show that would become a sensation, and that instant chemistry they felt during the audition translated perfectly to the screen. Both actors prepared intensely for their roles. Connor read Jacob's scripts first during the early audition process, then got all 6 episodes as things progressed. Before filming started, he finished the first book involving Shane and Ilya. Hudson did the same, reading Heated Rivalry multiple times, annotating scenes on his Kindle, studying every detail. But he deliberately didn't read the long game yet. He wanted to discover what happened to Shane and Ilya as he filmed, playing it as he went rather than knowing the future. He saved that book for right after they finished shooting. However, one cast member came in at the very end of the process and didn't have to go through any of this. Christina Chang was one of the last to join, and she didn't audition at all. The role was offered directly to her. She was sent the scripts, read them, and said yes. Then she had a phone conversation with Jacob Tierney that sealed the deal. She said, "Instantly, I was like, I really like this guy. He's smart, he's funny, he's witty, he's quick, which I really appreciate. We talked about his view of the character and what I appreciated about her, and we were pretty much on the same page from minute one." And just as Christina took the time to understand her character, Connor and Hudson did the same, and that raw, honest chemistry between them is exactly what made this show work.